I have mixed feelings on people entering the country illegally, but I was saying that if you walk through this desert, then you're really determined, and if you're that determined, I think you should get a job.
My humble opinion on how you stop illegal immigration is you put the people in jail who hire illegal aliens. Too many people are making a lot of money off this slavery that we have now that we call illegal immigration.
We were established in 1937 as a research resource typified by those saguaro cactus that everybody sees in the Roadrunner cartoons. You know these. Yeah, we're the only desert in the world that has those. We get about 300,000 people a year. And most of those folks travel through on Highway 85, which cuts right through the center of the park, on their way to Mexico. The thing that's most interesting right now about Oregon pipe cactus is that 30 miles of our southern boundary is actually the Mexican border. Before that border even existed, there was a culture here on the Tohono O'odham Reservation. Even after they had kind of moved off to the east of us, we have folks who were Mexican and folks who came in here as pioneers, and they traveled across the border, regardless of the fact that it was there was a line drawn in the sand. It's only been in the most recent history that people have tried to enforce that border.
Look at there. That's the first hole right there. You can see it. It's a hole in the fence. See, it's broken completely. See what the people doing to cross the border. Almost I can see right here the fence finish. Look at this. Even the cars. Most of the cars, well, when they don't want to declare, taking stuff from the United States to Mexico, besides pass from the gate, they decide come over here and make a little round, and they don't want to pay tax or stole vehicles. They don't even post over here. It's kind of fun. When in other places it's completely battled down, over here, nothing.
Well, our mission one, our priority one is anti-terrorism, first of all. Okay, and that's not to say that we've paid lesser attention to our traditional mission, the interdiction of contraband, collection and protection of revenue, but our job one is anti-terrorism.
For the last 5 years, we've come across the border. They haven't asked for our passports with a truck full of stuff.
There are several law enforcement agencies that exist on this border.
But there's a presence of now, the last few years, National Guard and guys with guns, and it looks really tough, like they're really checking anything. They haven't checked us at all.
Certainly the Border Patrol, certainly the Park Service. We all have different but similar missions.
Now, I would accuse the United States of posturing, wasting a lot of money, making it hard for Mexicans instead of protecting their own borders.
And we have, above all else, a responsibility toward the American people.
If I was a red-headed, freckled, old fat terrorist, I would have just rolled right across.
Just finding people that are willing to live in this area becomes a difficult circumstance. This is a very remote, somewhat isolated area.
There are drug smugglers that come through. There are folks who are smuggling those illegal immigrants that can't make it through on their own. There are folks we call coyotes. That are getting paid to bring folks across. That's illegal, smuggling as well. It's just they're smuggling. They're dealing in people as opposed to narcotics.
Coyotes or polleros, they say they're gonna take you across to a few minutes and a couple hours, but most of the time is living in the desert, just by yourself. And if you know nothing about this desert, you lose something, you could die.
Illegal aliens are a commodity to these people.
And the big fear here is that we're going to have some visitors that are going to come into contact.
When I first moved back to Ajo, the Border Patrol agents that we had here wanted out of here because it was so boring. There were well-documented changes in Border Patrol policy of shutting down the cities and forcing everybody into the deserts. We now see hundreds of thousands of illegals coming across our deserts between Ajo and Tucson on a yearly basis. And with that, because we have temperatures that average in the hundreds of the tens, we have many fatalities, many critically sick patients. We've had people that have gotten out of cars, walked 2-3 hours and died. And so we work with the rangers very closely with that. We respond several times a week.
People, when they try to cross the border, no median. Border Patrol bus, the big bus, sometimes bring a bunch of people, 50, 100 people, just drop them right in the door. So all these people, what are they gonna do? Sometimes they can make it back. Sometimes they decide to stay here. This is one of those places right here. They got people from everywhere, really from everywhere, from
all South America.
And Mexico, different place from Mexico.
The Chinese come through.
They get to Sonoita and the other border towns, they don't have family there, they don't have friends, they don't have jobs. They have no choice but to continue trying to come across the border. And if they get caught and they get returned, they're going to come back next week.
Of the maybe 80 to 100 families, Mexican families that live in our little town in Jalisco, all of them have sons, daughters, mothers, fathers that come across the border illegally to work.
And at great risk.
At great risk. And they also send a huge amount of money back to Mexico.
The economy is so bad in Mexico, where they're coming from, and that they are so desperate.
If Mexico and their president would have industry down there, they wouldn't have to do that.
60% of our produce in the west of Mississippi was coming from Mexico. Probably 75% of the produce in California, possibly Washington, is picked by Mexicans. They have a really difficult time coming across the border to work, and they're treated like criminals, and everyone knows that they are doing the work.
Go to Phoenix. Go to a fast food restaurant. Go to a motel. Look at somebody working on a roof. Go out in the fields. Who do you see?
I would hear a lot of people moaning and groaning and complaining about the illegal aliens coming in and taking their jobs. But the jobs they were complaining about were the jobs that they didn't want to take.
President Fox in Mexico said the economic boom of the United States is built on the backs of the illegal aliens. I think illegal immigration has affected Ajo drastically. We have over 100 Border Patrol agents in Ajo now. You know, these are good young families. When the mine shut down in 1985, our community didn't die, but it became a retirement community.
I'm Bob Boozer, or Bobby Glenn Boozer.
Great. Why did you decide to come back to Ajo?
I thought it was a good place to retire, and the Phelps Dodge Corporation, the company that owns the mine here, had about 1,000 houses that they had for sale. 1983, 84, 85. I say 3 years there. They closed down part of it, and then they still had ore that they processed, and they kept on it going until they got it all used up.
In 1958, we had about 8,000 in population. We had about close to 7 barber shops and about 14 barbers. Here we are, 1993, there's only 1 barber shop and 2 barbers.
At one time, this town, the revenue out of Ajo was the largest revenue in the state of Arizona.
When did the mine stop functioning?
In 1984. And not because they ran out of copper, but because they don't want to pay the price to get it out of the ground. They can get it cheaper in the Orient and in South America.
That town has basically lost its main source of income. So at this point, its source of income is folks traveling through Ajo and then through Oregon Pipe Cactus to get to Rocky Point.
And the thing we would like back are all the tourists. We used to see busfuls of Germans, of Japanese. With the problems the park has been having, its second year as most dangerous park in the U.S. park system as voted by the park rangers, that doesn't encourage anyone to come down here.
Yeah, I feel that Ajo is in the chrysalis stage, and eventually we're going to open up, spread our wings, and we're going to be very lovely. We're sitting with the Goldwater on one side and the Bureau of Land Management on another side, and then we have the Cabeza Prieta, and then we have the Oregon Pipe Monument, and then we have reservations.
Immigration control efforts to both sides of us have increased. In Southern California, Texas, New Mexico, it's such that it's very difficult for them to cross here. When people slip past anonymously and make it to a city, you don't notice it half as much. But out here in the great open spaces,
I do love to go out in the desert. As a matter of fact, on my back porch out there, I've got 2 ATVs. One for me and one for whoever I invite to go with me.
Wow.
That way I can be the big dog.
Have you ever seen any evidence or encountered any illegals in your ATV?
Many, many times.
Really?
Yes. I've even picked them up, brought them in, and turned them in. I saw 5 of them walking down a side street. Didn't want to get on the main street.
I've heard water running, and it's them just coming into the yard, getting water out of the hose, and going on.
I don't know how much foreign aid that the United States government gives Mexico each year, but I would love to see the government come in here and clean up the desert and then take it out of their foreign aid.
The litter that goes on because of the illegal migration is so overwhelming that there's not much we can do.
There's certain places out in the desert where you can't go 15 feet without a piece of trash. I found backpacks out there. I found clothes. I found a $20 bill in one time.
it looks tough, it looks prickly, but the desert is very fragile. Ancient trails used by the Slocombe have been destroyed. Archaeological remains are being destroyed.
This is the door for these people over here. They sometimes take a stop from Mexico to cross the border, you know, the people, they don't want to pay tax to Mexico. Clothes, shoes, or tires.
So what exactly is he doing?
Just take it, like I say, groceries. Sometimes they go to the garbage too. The people fix this line, they come in and fix it, you know, every hole. And when the guy tried to fix the hole, the guy from Mexico over here say, please don't close it, because it's my business. I have family to feed. And the guy say, okay. And they fix the door and say, the only place, keep it locked. When you use it, open it and back close again.
A lot of people are concerned about the safety issue. It's a problem you think of inner city. It's just very uncomfortable to feel that you're living in Mayberry, USA, small town, people know each other, and knowing you're living in a major drug smuggling corridor.
The biggest talk that I hear about not being able to help those illegals that are crossing or in distress.
If you're caught with UDAs in your car, you lose your vehicle. They're caught at your home, if you're harboring them, you've lost your house. They have no idea what to do, so they're left out in the cold. Every once in a while you hear that they've come across a skeleton.
Let's just cut the crap and give them permits to come up and work, because they don't want to stay. They love Mexico. They would be happy to come up, avoid coyotes, avoid being killed or dying, trying to sneak across the border and running out of water or starving to death, and all the problems would be eliminated. It would cut our immigration and border patrol costs.
That illegal aliens are not being treated fairly when it comes to pay, benefits, but that's what makes them attractive.
Our housekeeper, when he's now 32 years old, but when he was 18, he swam across the river.
No benefits, no Social Security, $2-3 an hour, if that much.
He was 16,
Yeah,
and I wanted to bring him
exactly,
back up this year because his wife had a stroke, and Julie wanted to stay with her and help her with yoga, and it was impossible for me. I talked to the U.S. Embassy in Guadalajara because when he was 16, he came up illegally, or 15, and he got a driver's license or something. They said it was being impossible.
If I was an employer and I had a choice of hiring a bunch of people and paying them nothing, who would I hire?
Simple over here too. So it's really easy. everyone, whatever can come in pants if they want. See, no license plate. Most of those vehicles. That's funny. People rent a taxi, and they take you, like I say, about 50 kilometers from here, and they buy from the second-hand stores. They buy bicycles, and it is used to drive it, to cross the border.
They're coming great distances from the Yucatan.
A lot of people use those when they know nothing about this desert. Just follow this post line, post. They try to follow the lines all the way to the next town. The border patrol have kinds of sensors.
They have bought into the idea our streets are paved with gold. And the people who know that their cousin Miguel sends $100 home every month, and the $100 is enough to take care of his whole family, don't realize it's not going to do the same thing in the United States. It's hard not to be sympathetic to a lot of these people because they're basically good, decent people coming here for the same reason my ancestors came here, to get a better life.
You can see the borders. I'm going to show you just in a moment. Yeah. How the fan looks like. Even places don't have a fan. So that means really no, nothing.
The undocumented migrants who are coming across in small armies at times, 100 people. Frequently the groups aren't that big, but the groups are getting bigger and bigger. It seems to me they're going the philosophy that if Border Patrol does come up on them, if they split up, somebody can get away. Unfortunately, they're going through wilder and wilder parts. It used to be you'd see them more coming up along the highway or a couple hundred yards off the road, but following the road. And now they're being given deep into the empty desert. There is just nothing. And it's very easy to get lost out there. You turn around and pretty soon all the mountains start to look the same. There's no water. The temperature's 110 easily. And we see a lot of dehydration. We see a lot of hyperthermia. It's said in the desert you either bake or you're based. So the rain doesn't necessarily make things better. Yes, they have water, but the temperature's still high. And when it's humid, the body isn't as efficient at cooling.
Now it's a business, They got people over there standing to them to here, not really walking around. They're already coming point to point, so they don't spend time over running around in town. No, really making problems with the community.
A lot of these people are in their 20s. We're getting more women and children. Instead of dad making a visit and sneaking back across the border, the families are trying to get across to join the dad. It's not just the heat and dehydration, a lot of highway accidents. Just a few weeks ago, we were at an accident. It was a medium-sized van. I think it was 22 people packed into it. And we had a death of a 22-year-old man and of a beautiful little 3-year-old girl. And that's just heartbreaking on that side, that 3-year-old little girls shouldn't be laying dead in the highway. On the other hand, crime goes up. Organized crime is a big part of the immigration trade, and they have found that the immigrants trying to cross make great mules to carry things.
We have a good part of our population that probably is involved in the smuggling and transportation of illegals, and that probably brings finances into the community that wouldn't be there without it.
I guess they offer them $3,000 or $4,000 to take a pack of drugs from here to Phoenix. And they're not working, they cooperate.
One of our rangers, Chris Egley, last year in August was murdered. We assumed that it was a drug smuggling operation. There was a hitman that came across, and Chris was called in as backup to try to arrest these guys, and one of them jumped out of the bushes with an AK-47 and got him. before Chris was able to raise his weapon and shoot him back. Because most of the folks that were here at the time were so affected by the tragedy that they felt the need to find another place to be. It was just too hard to be here. And the people who have come in to replace those folks and to build that staff up, almost every single one of them knew Chris.
And that really made it hit home, you know, how dangerous it is. It's one thing when you hear of someone shot and it's far away, but when it's somebody you said hello to in Pizza Hut the day before, it's like you're living in two dimensions at once.
You know, Mexican people, their soul, their work, and their resources, combined with our technology and money, is going to explode in the future to become one grand block.
As a citizen and as a resident of Arizona for over 40 years, I think Organ Pipe certainly is one of the most pristine desert areas anywhere in the southwestern part of the United States.
I think it's good to have that national monument there. Their Organ pipes are all over the place down there.
They are building something called an impenetrable barrier fence.
They've talked about calling out Armory Reserve and putting a man every 20 feet.
Vehicles will not be able just to plow through the border anywhere they want to go. It's going to funnel them back into the ports or funnel them out of the park.
I cheered when the Berlin Wall came down. And if we erect a wall at the border like that, aren't we just erecting something similar? Are we going to put the armed guards and shoot anyone who tries to cross?
You know, and it breaks my heart to come down here today and see this signs, intense border patrol, and guys with guns running around, and these poor kids are trying to run across the border to make a few dollars, and they would like to go home.
And it's not going to stop foot traffic, so folks that are going to be able to, that are walking, are still going to be able to get across because there's no way to prevent that.
We can either allow them to enter somehow legally, so they can come in air-conditioned buses perhaps, like the old Bracero program, the act that was recently introduced in Congress, a guest worker program. But that's only going to help the ones who are aware of it, who can get hired. There are still people who are going to try anyway. So perhaps a big part of it would be to help those countries with their economic development.
Have I made up my decision as to whether or not we should seal the border completely? I mean, if you weigh the pros and cons of both sides of the argument, I honestly have no idea.